Kakadosh Boker Or. Masechet Avodah Zarah Daf Yomi, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph 13a1. We were talking about that there was a machloket. Now Rabbi Yochanan is going to argue on what we just said. But in the Mishnah, we spoke about that. What happens if you have two different stores? One store which is going to be mekushat lichvod Avodah Zarah, and one store which is not mekushat, meaning it's adorned with that for the Avodah Zarah or not. So you only could go to the ones with obviously which is not mekushat. Now he says, but if it's going to be only mikushat kavanah, it's mikushat with vered hadasim, because then you're benefiting from the reach. When you go into these stores and it's like a perfumes, so therefore you're benefiting your body, you're benefiting from it. But he says, but if it's just going to be mutarot beperod, for sure it's going to be mutar. Why? It says lo yibak biyadecha meuma min acherem ne'enau d'sur. Mehane is going to be shadi. So he says over here, what does that mean? He says, right? Okay, there's going to be a lifnei iver, right? So he says, Rabbi Yochanan says, even if it's going to be mutarot beperot, is also going to be asur because you're mehanet avodah zarah, because they come and they take taxes from the store. So the fact that they take taxes from the store, it's going to be asur. Kal vachomer nehene asur mehaneh lo kol sheken, that it's going to be asur. So I actually just had a question like this recently, right, to do with of the Avodah Zarah, that somebody wanted to rent out a property of the Avodah Zarah, but he would have to be paying rent to the Avodah Zarah. There's nowadays, yeah, without saying, yeah, 100%. So what happens is it's going to be it's a sur. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to pay rent. You're paying rent to Avodah Zarah. So now he says as follows. Meidvei. So we're going to ask the following question. Rabbi Natan says, Yom she'avodat kochavim manachat bo et hameches. A day that right now that they're going to say that there's no taxes. Machrizim v'omrim, so they're going to mention, kol mi shenotel atara, anybody that's going to take an atara of plachim or besamim v'yaniach berosho, uvrosh chamoro lichvod avodah kochavim, and he's going to place it on his head and on the head of the chamor for avodah kochavim. Yanichu lo tameches. They're going to place the meches. If not, al yanichu lo tameches. Yehudi shenimsa sham. If they have a Yehudi there, mayaseh. Meaning, if he's going to put an atara on his head, nimtza ne'ena. He's going to be benefiting from avodah zarah. Velo yaniach. If he's not going to place it, nimtza mehaneh. או בגלל הוא צריך לשלם מכס. אז עוד פעם, אם הוא שם, אבל זה הבעיה, בדרך כלל כל יום הוא עושה, אבל היום יש לו פטור. אבל על ידי הפטור הוא נהנה, ועל ידי, אם הוא לא שם את הפטור, הוא מענה. אז מה זה? אז מכאן אמרו, from here we said, yeah, you understood again. Yeah, so he says, מכאן אמרו, הנושא ונותן בשוק של עבודי קרובים, בהמה תעקר. Yeah, he says, you have to put a mum. פירות, כסות וכלים ירכבו, just leave it there to rot. Ma'ot ukle matechot, you have to take it to Yam HaMelach. Ve'ezu ikur, what is the ikur now? He says, Am nasher parsotem min hakoval mata. If you come and you cut off its legs from the knees downwards, right? But by doing it that way, you make it into a terefa. Ve'ktani miyata, we did learn, yaniach nimtza ne'eneh, lo yaniach nimtza mehaneh. So you see, which one? We give him a knas. Amar of Mishashia Beled Ravidi. Kasavar Shakish, Shimon Malakish, Fliger Banan Rabbi Natan. That obviously the Shakish holds the Chachamim. They argue on Rabbi Natan, and they hold that it's mutale not lehanot et avodah zarah. The Ana Damri Karabanan, the Pligalem, we hold like Rabbanan that they argue on him. For Rabbi Yochanan Savar, Rabbi Yochanan holds no lo plige. They don't argue, meaning there's no machloket Chachamim Rabbi Natan. The lo plige. So he says the Gemara what? There's no machloket. But tell you we did learn. Right? Holchim layadit shel avdei chavim. You're allowed to go to Yom HaShuk to the Chavim. Right, עבדים ושפחות, בתים, שדות וכרמים, וכותב, and you're allowed to write all these shtarot, ומעלה ברכות שלהם, and you're allowed to even put it in their courts, but you're saving it from their hands. ואם היה כהן, and if it's a kohen, מטמא בחוץ לארץ, he could even become מטמא בחוץ לארץ, in order to do these things. לדון ולערער עליהם, to go and to take the property, ושל שמטמא בחוץ לארץ, כמה גם בבית הקברות. So says Gemara, what? בבית הקברות, you really think you could go to the בית הקברות? A kohen, he can never go to the Bet HaKvarot, even if he's going to lose money. Right? Tuma Doraita. So he says in a Bet HaPras, it's Tumat Bet HaPras, שזה דרבנן. אתם יודעים מה זה Bet HaPras? Bet HaPras זה שנאבד הקבר בתוך השדה. זאת אומרת, ודאי שקברו בן אדם ולא יודעים איפה הוא. ונאבד בתוך השדה, אז אתה לא יודע איפה זה. אז אנחנו חושבים שאולי זה פה, אולי זה שם, אולי זה פה, אנחנו יודעים. So says the Gemara, הוא מתאמן ללמוד תורה ולהישא אישה. He could even become טמא in חוץ לארץ or in the בית הפרס, ללמוד תורה, to learn תורה, להישא אישה, to get married to a woman. So Amar of Yehuda says of Yehuda, מתי? When do they permit? בזמן שאינו מוצא ללמוד, if he cannot learn where he is. בזמן שמוצא ללמוד, אין מטמא, but if not, then no. Meaning, if he's able to learn somewhere else, he can't just come and say, you know, I'm going to become a טמא and I'm going to go here. תלמד במקום אחר. Right? So he says, רבי יוסי אומר, no. אפילו בזמן שמוצא ללמוד יתמה. לפי שאין אדם זוכה ללמוד מכל. Not everybody could be זוכה to learn from every rabbi. Yes. Right? Which means that every single one is there's a different of a shoresh of a neshama, there's a different, they're able to clean. And therefore, they're able to actually come and to do that. Yeah, me. Yeah. ואמר רבי יוסי, says רבי יוסי, מעשה ביוסף הכהן שלח אחר רבו לציידן. Do you know Yosef Kohen? He went after his rabbi to Tzaidan, which is Chutzaretz, Limod Torah. Right? So you see from here that that means even though he could have learned from another rabbi in Eretz Yisrael, hu alach achar rabo. Lama? זה היה רב שלו. אז הוא הלך אחריו. הוא הלך לחוץ-לארץ, לא משנה. הוא הולך אחריו, איפה שהוא ילך, הוא הולך. ואמר רבי יוחנן, says רבי יוחנן, הלכה זה כרבי יוסף. Right? What does that mean? You're allowed to. Alma plikis. So obviously you see here that he is arguing. Right? בגלל פה אתה רואה שהוא כן חולק עליו. זאת אומרת, חכמים חולקים רבי נתן. לפי שיטתם, מותר לקנות ביריד של עובדי כוכבים, הוא מענה את עבודה זרה. לא כרבי נתן. So, which is a very interesting, this entire concept of ממש going to חוץ לארץ, right? לא, בגלל תרומת העמים. וגם כן, למה הוא יוצא לחוץ לארץ? הוא אומר פה, זה תוספות. תוספות שואל, הוא אומר, דווקא לצורך מצוות גדולות אלו התירו, ולא לצורך מצווה אחרת. הוא אומר, אבל, ואז הם כתבו, אף היוצא ללמוד תורה ולהישא אישה לא התירו לו, אלא כשיוצא על מנת לחזור לארץ ישראל, וכשאין דדו לחזור לארץ אסור, ולא מפני טומאה, אלא אסור אף לכל אדם לצאת לחוץ לארץ. יוכיחו מכם מהגמרא בכתובות. אוקיי? זאת אומרת לא סתם ככה. אמר לך רבי יוחנן is going to answer you, לעולם לא פליגה. Really באמת, there's no מחלוקת between חכמים and רבי נתן. And everybody agrees that it's אסור להנות את העבודה זרה. ולא קשיא, but it's not a question. כאן בלוקח מן התגר, דשק למכסה מיני. Here we're talking about where the קונה is taking it from the סוחר. That he's going to take the מכס לעבודה זרה. And therefore he said it's אסור. וכאן בלוקח מבעל הבית. And here we're talking about that you're buying it directly from the בעל הבית, and therefore there's no מכס. Meaning, who are you buying it from? Are you buying it from Stama Socher, and then they add the taxes? Or, כן, זו דומה למוספים את כל המכס, או אתה קונה את זה ישר מהבעל הבית, וממילא אין מיסים. אז אם אין מיסים, אז מותר. אז אין מחלוקת. זה תלוי מי אתה לוקח את זה ממי. הבנתם? כאילו, תלוי מי אתה לוקח. כן, בגלל זה היה בסוחר. רק בסוחרים. זאת אומרת, it wasn't a private business. It was like ממש... אתה סוחר, לא סתם אתה הולך לבעל הבית ואתה אומר לו, אתה עשית את זה, תביא לי, אני משלם לך. לא מדברים על זה. אוקיי? אמר מור says, בהמה תעקר. So we said the animal, we have to uproot it. שואלת הגמרא, והיא קצה בעלי חיים. says, what are you doing? אתה עושה את הבהמה טרפה, אבל צער בעלי חיים. You're causing the animal to suffer. איך אתה יכול לצייר את הבהמות? So Rabbi says, the Torah says, את סוסיהם תעקר. That it's מותר לעשות אותם עקרים. זאת אומרת, even though זה צער בעלי חיים, it's מותר לקנוס בעל הבהמה שנשא מנתן שוק של עובדים. זאת אומרת, בדיוק כמו המלחמה של הכנענים, היה מותר לבוא איך קוראים לזה? לעקר את הסוסים שלהם, אז אותו דבר. סאמר מור says, איזו עיקור? What is עיקור? מנשר פרסותיה, עד הרכובה למטה. You cut off the hooves, right? ממש, from the knees downwards. Or meaning we have a contradiction. הם מקדישים ומחרימים ומניחים בזמן הזה. Right? Nowadays, we don't do מקדישים or מחרימים, which means we don't do הקדש in לשון of חרם or הקדש, or מעריכין or ערכין. בזמן הזה, nowadays, אם הקדיש ויחרים ויניח, if you did do it, בהמה תעקר. פירות כסות וכלים, י"ג עמוד, ירכבו. מעות וכלי מתוכות יוליכם לים המלח, וזו עיקור, נועל דלת בפניה, והיא מתה מעליה. He says, what is עיקור? You let it die on its own. Lock the door, אין לו אוכל, אין לו כלום, בום, הוא מת. מאליו. אתה לא עושה כלום. זה נקרא עיקור. לא שאתה עושה את זה טרפה ואז הוא מת. אז מתרצת הגמרא, says the גמרא, אמר רבי, Abaye says, שנה הטה מצפרד over there, משום ביזיון קודשים. Because of the ביזיון of קודשים. He says here, but if you're going to tell me now, שתעקר ידי חיתוך פרסאות, there's a ביזיון of קודשים. So therefore, because it's not going to die immediately. So because of that, נועל דלת בפניה. That means דווקא לגבי קודשים עושים את זה ככה. שנועל דלת בפניה והיא מתה מעליה. But if it's going to be the other one, which is our case, a knas, no, that you could do it the other way. So says the Gemara, v'nishchate mishchat. She says, just do shechita. So he says, if you do shechita, they're going to eat it. So says the Gemara, v'lishavya gistra. Fine, so cut it to half. If you cut it to half, for sure it's going to die right away, and nobody's going to eat it. Amar Abaye, Amar Akad, the pasuk says, v'nitasem mizbechutam lo tasuk in l'Hashem lokachem. Asur lintos v'la'arotz kol davar shu hekdesh l'Hashem. So to arigat be'ema betzura kazoti, זה אסור. No, here it is הקדש. He's saying that אסור לעשות את זה.
לא, אני אומר, אבל פה יש הקדש, אבל אתה לא יכול לעשות הקדש, אבל בכל זאת עשה.
Yes, but that's what we said. We said that since בכל זאת הוא עשה, חייב לעשות את זה. The reason why nowadays you don't do הקדש is just because it's going to go, יבוא לידי תקלה. אז זה הבעיה. Rava says, he says there's another reason. אתה יודע מה הסיבה? כשאתה בא ואתה חותך בהמה באמצע, ממש, you come and you take the animal and you cut it in half. It looks like you're putting a mum in kochim. You're not allowed to put a mum in kochim. Remember, one more time, you made a dish. You're not allowed to make a dish nowadays. People would eat it, people would this, people would that. So it's a problem. So he says here it's nid'eh, kemetil mum kochim. Nid'eh says, what do you mean nid'eh? It's a mum me'alia. You're cutting it in half. It's a real mum. It looks like you're making a mum. So he says, Anamile bizman shebet hamikdash kiyam. Dechazi la'akrava. When there was a bet hamikdash and you could bring it on the mizbeach, then you're right. Then it's mamash matil mum. Hashta de lo chazi la'akrava, אבל בזמן הזה שאתה לא יכול להקריב את זה במזבח, let lamba. It's only need air. It looks like you're placing a mum in a kochim. So says the Gemara, v'lahavi kimatil mum bar mum. Says it should be even more than that. What happens if you're going to put a mum in an animal that already has a mum? That means an animal שיש בו mum, מותר להקריב אותו? לא. אז אם אני שם עוד mum על זה, right? אבל עוד פעם, אבל זה לא בעיה, בגלל בין כך אני לא יכול להקריב את זה. אבל עדיין זה אסור. So he says, בלמום נהיד לו חזה לגופה לדמי חזה. He says, בלמום, זה לא ראוי, it's not fitting for its money, for its body. But for its money, it is fitting. Here, it's nothing. You can't use not the money or not the body. And that's why he says there's no Yisur Torah to place a mum. Ashkeche Rabbi Yonah li Rabbi Elai, tekaya pitcha de Tzor. So once Rabbi Yonah found Rabbi Elai that he was at the entrance of the city of Tzor. Amarle, he told him, Ktani, we learned be'emat te'aked. Right? Eved mai. Says, okay, what do you do with an Eved? You went and you bought an animal. Right? So we already said, cut off the legs on the bottom, fine. What about an Eved? So he says, Eved Yisrael Kamibale. For sure, the question is not by an Eved Yisrael, because obviously you can't put a mum in an Eved Yisrael. Ki Kamibale, when is it doubt? Eved Kochavim. What's halacha? So Elmaleh, he told him, my Kamibale, what's the question? Tanya, we learned it. He says, you put them down and you don't put them up. Meaning these guys are Rishaim, right? But Yehudim. But what a kavanah? Tasam otam em reshaim, tasim otam betoch habor, tashir otam shama. Lo ma'alim v'lo moridim. Right? I don't take them out of the pit but I'm not going to put them down in the pit. Zot omeret she'afilu oved kochavim asur lamito. So vaday ani lo yachol la'aker oved kochavim. So Elmaleh Rabbi Yomi Rabbi Zara Ktani, but we learned dochim mehem be'ema ovadim shvachot. Right? Ve'eved Yisrael. He says you're allowed to purchase from the goyim the be'ema ovadim shvachot. Batim, Sadot, Kramim. Now, if it's going to be Davka Eved Yisrael, that's the Kavanah. Or Dilma, even Oved Kochavim. Meaning, what type of an Eved? Is it Sug Eved? Eved Yudi or Eved Goy? So Elmaleh, Mistabra, it's more Mistaber, Eved Yisrael. Why? Because if you're going to tell me Oved Kochavim, what do you need him for? What do you need him for? So Kiata Ravin Amar Rabbi Shimon Lakish, no, it's even a coin. Why? Remember, when you take an Eved Kochavim, you're converting him. כן, הוא חייב במצוות כמו אישה. כן, זאת אומרת, אתה כן מכניס אותו תחת כנפי השכינה. So Ravashi comes and he says, Atu be'ema, my machdis. He says, what do you do with an animal then? You're bringing the animal tachal kafeh shechina? So he said, Mishum miutani. He says, no, because of the mute. So he says, he says, you're minimizing how many do they have. יותר בהמות שאתה קונה מהם, פחות שיש להם. אז אתה ממעט מהם. אז אותו דבר. Right? The less that they're going to have, the better. So therefore, that's what you're doing. You're buying everything from them. So there was a story. Rabbi Yaakov Zivan Sandala. Rabbi Yaakov, he bought a sandal in the Yerid of the Akum. Rabbi Yirmiyah Zavan Pita, he bought, right, lechem in the Yerid of Akum. Amal Hechal lechavres. So one of them said to his friend, Yatma. Yeah, he says, right, like as if Avad Rabba Chachi. It's like Yatom, right? What? That's what your rabbi did to do Sechora. Amal Leidech. The other one says, Yatma Avad Rabba Chachi. This is what you did. What's going on? Tarvayu mi balabait zavun. They both bought it from the balabait. And each one thought that they bought it from the tagar. Remember, if you're buying it from the tagar, matzarich l'shalem mimeches misim. As asur, right? That means it's going to be asur if you're buying it from the sochrim, from the merchants. However, if you're buying it directly from the balabait, there's no problem. It's only if you're going to buy from the merchants. They're going to take taxes. But if you're going to buy from the balabait, that they're not going to take the taxes. It's going to be mutar. So it wasn't for the fact that Rabbi Yochanan wasn't during this time. Now they didn't take from the balabait. So then it's going to be asur then. So says the Gemara, so then how does he buy it then? So he says, he bought it from a balabait which is not kavua. Meaning, according to everybody, a balabait which is not kavua, right? They don't take taxes from. It was only a balabait kavua that they would come and they would take taxes. Fine, last Mishnah. You give me Mishnah. These are the things that you're not allowed to sell to an Avodah Zarah all year round. It's strobalin. I don't have it in English. You have what is strobalin? So we have the strobalin that it could be it's a pine corn. Benot shuach, the Gemara is going to explain. Petoteret, also uktzim, the Gemara is going to explain. Livona, frankincense. Tanegol levan, the white rooster. Why? Because all these things were used for Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yudah says, "Mutalim kolo tanegol levan ben tanegolin." You could sell him a white tanegol, right, between all the other tanegolim. Meaning, it's אתה מוכר הרבה tanegolim, אז בתוך זה יש לך אחד לבן. ובזמן שהוא בפני עצמו, but if it's going to be by himself, קוטע את אצבעו, cut off its finger, ומוכרו לו, and then you sell it to him. Because once it's going to be cutting off a finger, it's chaser, so then they don't bring it as Avodah Zarah. Right? Ushai kol advarim and all the other things. Staman mutar. Stam, if you sell it, it's going to be mutar. Perushan, but if they tell you mefurash, shem yishtamshu b'zeh b'shvil Avodah Zarah, but they're going to use it for Avodah Zarah, it's going to be asur. Rabbi Meir Omer, af dekel tav v'chatzav, even a dekel, which is going to be a good one. I don't know what it means here. Tav v'chatzav, it's good. Here it says a fine date palm. Chatzav and niklas. I don't know. It doesn't. I guess the Gemara is going to say asur in kol avodat kochavim. It's going to be asur to sell to the avodat kochavim.